We are live, excellent, with another show, another Toxic Tuesday, and we're really excited. I mean, we're excited every week with the wonderful co-host guests that we have. And this week's guest, Stacie Rae, the resting traveler, has a few books under her belt, and she is going to talk to us about some of the things that she's done, and more importantly, some of the advice that she has based on a lot of research and the social work purview that she has, where she understands the dynamics and relationships between people and situations. And it's going to help us. How do we navigate some of these curveballs related to narcissistic relationships? So welcome, Stacie. Why don't you, I gave the introduction there, but why don't you put it in your own words?
Well, I love that you said, more importantly, it's not about me, because that is how I live. Your story is the thing that brings you into the platform of helping other people. So when you're a role model, when you are the adventurous one that's like standing on the rooftops telling your story, we're not even really talking about us. We're just using our story to talk to you and teach you something. And so I really love that you said that, because I am here today, and I can tell you just like here, in my body, but here on your show, because I have the same beliefs as you do, is that we are here to help align people to the truth of who they are and give them tools that impact their life. And that's what my latest book is about. The Last Letter: Surviving a Narcissistic Relationship. Have you had one, Laura Lynn? Or five?
Yes. Well, a few, but one really bad one, had the relationship, got the ring and the t-shirt and nothing else, lost everything else in the process. Yeah, one of those.
Yeah, so you are unfortunately in a very common category with a lot of people, and this is increasing on a daily basis. So I know that anybody who's watching this right now, that you are probably going, oh yeah, I had quite a few, or maybe you didn't know that that's what it was until you got out of it. That was me.
Yeah. I want to come
Toxic
back
relationships, right? Like they have different layers to them. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. And then we're, I have a series of questions that I have ready for you, Stacie. And one of them is that at that point, when you recognize the relationship for what it is, but before you answer that, I always like to greet our guests. We've got a few folks in the house here. We've got Sandy Wendy, we've got Alicia, we've got some wonderful folks, other people coming in that are lurking. That's okay to lurk. You don't have to be in the chat.
That's okay. They don't have to say hi yet. They will, though.
You feel comfortable. Gotta feel comfortable. But I do want you to answer that question, please, for our guests, because I think it's really important that so much time can go by. We don't realize that we're in a dangerous relationship, an unhealthy relationship. What was your aha moment, Stacie?
So I had a very long marriage. And then from that, I dated a little bit. And then I found a certain person that I was very connected with. And I felt like this was home. This was my person. And that was what, in the middle of it, seemed like such a glorious thing. And there would be these little things that would happen, but I would always dismiss them and give this benefit of the doubt. And it wasn't until after what we call a discard in this narcissistic community, it wasn't until being discarded by this person that I started to look backwards and realize all of these relationships had the same problems, the same red flags, and I walked away with the same feelings. And that's when I started to research narcissism, only because somebody said to me, it sounds like you have been in a lot of toxic narcissistic relationships. And that was just the gateway.
Right. So that light comes on. And one of the guests we have in here, her comment is up here, Alicia. She was our guest co-host last week in episode 7. And she talked all about the narcissist playbook, which is all they do, the same sorts of things, right? That super charm, they come on really strong, the love bombing, this, that.
Right.
And then you start to think, oh, is something wrong with me? And they start to creep in and tear you down, gaslight you, all of the stuff, all of the words. But that's just it. You don't realize. I knew I was in an unhealthy relationship, And sadly, I really knew by the first Christmas we spent together, but spent years trying to sort myself out and go like, should I be here? Well, he needs help. He needs my help.
Right.
And
You took it on yourself.
that's right. Something was wrong with me. And I don't want to make this about me. We're going to, about your show. The last thing I'm going to say is that, like I said, on that aha moment, my aha moment was in the police station after they just arrested him and did this and did that and put me to safety. And I talked to the psychologist that was on staff, and she said, textbook narcissistic personality disorder, Laurelyn. And I went, what's that?
Wow.
I thought narcissism was like, oh, you just look in the mirror a lot and you're like, yeah, I'm pretty. I didn't know.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I would agree. I would agree. And that's the thing, is that you actually nailed it right there, is that you walked away from those small or large situations and you thought, well, this must be something that's wrong with me, because you've given this person a visual context that they're a good person, that, well, they must have had a bad day, or they had a really bad childhood. And so then all of the manipulation that happens, especially very early on in a narcissistic relationship, is you are being fed an A/B switch continually. This is a manipulation pattern of, you're on a pedestal, you are the shining star, you're idealized. This is like, you're the golden person, golden girl, right? And then all of a sudden, until you're not. And you can't figure out why you're not, because you don't understand, wait a minute, how did we go from here to here? And so the mind is very good at suddenly telling you, well, it's internal. This is us. Something's wrong with us. Now, add to that some childhood wounds that you have, abandonment, rejection, maybe neglect. And you've believed for a whole lifetime that you have to earn love. And so you're self-love deficient. What is your natural response? Oh, I'm going to earn that love back. I am going to make it work. This is my fault. Right. I shouldn't have done that, right? Makes sense.
And this is just exactly. And we've got a few more guests want to say hello. So Alicia Gordon, we've got a couple of Alicias on the show tonight. What are the odds of that? Fantastic. and this is just it. Alicia comments that it's so common. We take on this something we feel like we need to fix or change ourselves because they've eroded our sense of self and our confidence. Right. And so we start to think, oh, it's me. I need to fix. I need to do this.
And Sandy Wandy says that he blamed the change in his behavior on me. That's in the comments. Okay. That is because the changes that are occurring, a narcissist cannot self-internalize and reflect. He cannot acknowledge or take accountability for them. And so his program is to then project it outwards as you or anyone in the exterior field. It is your issue. So people that are self-love deficient, the empaths, the energy givers, we then take that and we're just like, oh, you're right. Oh, because you're telling me. Because remember, we built a trauma bond with this person.
See, okay, that's really interesting where I want to get into it again. More hellos. We've got Craig on here. Craig is going to be our guest co-host next week. He's an energy healer. So all of the people that have just been, vampire sucked down by the narcissist in their life, we're going to have Craig on next week. But this is Stacie's show here. So back to Stacie. One of the things when you were talking to me about, the reasons why, first of all, there was an about. And for those of you that heard it, yes, that sounded Canadian-y. And Stacie is also another Connect girl. So we've got to, do the, poutine and maple syrup cheers toast here there first. But back to this. So when you were talking about the research you were doing for your book, it was about a gap. And you were looking in the literature and everything writes about, oh, this is the narcissist. This is their behavior. This is what they do. Again, they're still being heralded, even though they're the problem. Like you said, we have this trauma bond and it's never about us and our journey. And that's what I love about your book, The Last Letter, Surviving a Narcissistic Relationship, that you make it about you and the person that's in the journey with the narcissist. So talk to me about the research and what you looked at and how you came to that conclusion.
Well, what I found is that the social media that was really instrumental. There's a season for that. They focused on all the behaviors of the narcissist, which did help me to go, okay, yes, like I'm not crazy. That is a real thing. And all these people, they align with that. But then what happened from there is I was trying to figure out, well, now what? What do I do now? And the only thing I could find was either like very high level educated people that I didn't really understand some of the language. And they were telling me, again, this is the psychological problems of this, but I didn't see anybody that said, here's a manual, here's the step-by-step action plan. And so when I was doing my own healing, I was just writing letters, just trying to be cathartic and just saying like, I got to get this out. So I started to write letters to the narcissist. And this was just like all the narcissists. Okay. And that trembled into things like to the woman who cheated on me with, like, okay, there's that person. I got to write a letter to them, or I got to write a letter to the family that I now lost out of these relationships. Right. That's how it started. But then when I got it all together and I realized there is nowhere that's telling me how to go upwards. And so the book it's kind of like the baby steps forward. And then from that, I've created a workshop that's in my private academy. So I have the Academy of Alchemy, and those are places that you can download files and like learn different topics. But in a private academy, I actually have a workshop for this. And one of the biggest things that I teach in that workshop is called the 5 steps of stair. Okay, so the staircase upwards, because again, we don't have these tools. So as you look at the chat and you see people start to say like, yeah, like I resonate with you, but you can resonate all you want. How do you know where to go? And so the steps of stair are, first you're going to go through, because you have to realize you're going to get left at some point by the narcissist. Either they're going to discard you or you're going to leave. That's going to happen. Okay. For you left because of violence and you were forced into a situation where you could finally break free. But you're going to go through some things. You're going to feel shock. So that's step 1. And when you move through the step of shock, then you move into the tethering and you realize you're trauma bonded. And that trauma bond that's the manipulation that you realize has actually taken hold of your mind, your hormones, your actions. And when we get through the tethering, we have accounting. That's when we take stock and we're like, oh my God, I have been through a lot. And that's the internal self-realization. And once you get to that stage, you start to feel a little bit angry because you realize what you've been through. And that's the 4th stair, which is indignation. You get righteously angry at everything that's occurred to you, but then you're angry at yourself. How did I let this happen? I am worth more than this. And that's the last step we get to step onto, which is rising up. You get to rise up outside of all of that. And that's what the book is designed to do, is to take people through all these components and not just tell you about the narcissist, because you're right. They have far too much airtime.
I know.
I don't want to contribute to that anymore.
No, it's like break the cycle, right? In multiple ways. Can you recap those 5 steps again, please?
Yes. So step number 1 out of the 5. So step 1 is shock. Step 2 is tethering. Step 3 is accounting. Then we have indignation and rising up. And that is the 5 steps of stair. And that is how we move through the process after we've been discarded or we have left. And essentially we have, we've got the 7 stages of grief, or Susan Anderson breaks through with the stages of abandonment, and she calls it swirl. And there's lots of us that have tried to identify a way, but what I've seen is with narcissism, it's very specific. That discard or leaving that trauma, it is like nothing else I've experienced.
Yeah, you're just cut out. And that was one of the things that really surprised me when I was the one breaking away, finally getting strong. Like, what am I doing here? I'm being emotionally depleted, financially depleted, spiritually depleted. Yes. And oh, by the way, right, I'm being abused on all these levels.
But you're supposed to be okay with that.
Right. And then so when I said, okay, this kind of needs to wrap. And he said, well, I have a proposal. I want you to continue paying for the house. I'm going to live upstairs and I'm going to run for mayor. And I'd like to be with my girlfriend. And then that way we can be separated in the house. And it's like, are you kidding me? Really?
Oh, the stories I could tell, Laurelyn.
Wow. how did I get to this point? Now, and back to your book, in the last letter, what you do is not only within the describing these 5 steps that you've outlined, with a 30-day plan and really making it accessible so that people can figure out what it is. Like, as you said, it's not lofty psychology speak where you need to be a PhD, clinician on some level to understand and explain it to people. And you tie it into whatever other norms and standards and, case. It's just like, no, these are the things you need to do. This is what you have to do. Look in, dig in, how you heal, how you lean on other people. So talk to us about that, your guide that you put together for folks.
Well, think of this. So we've identified that we talk far too much about the narcissist. Okay, but how do we talk about us? How do we, as the participants in this relationship? Okay, so we can see that some people were using language like we're the victim, and we are. Okay, so I do use this language in the book. We are the survivors, but let's not forget that we are participants. Okay, so if we're a participant, what is my role? What did I do to get here? And apparently repeatedly, because I've done this, how many times with somebody that's toxic. So the book really focuses on you, on me, the internal self, and the fact that we actually gave that away to a narcissist. We gave our power away just trying to receive some scraps. Like, please just love me. Just love me. I'm so self-love deficient. I just need some attention. And then somebody comes along and they're like, oh, baby. And they idealize you and they love bomb you. And we are starving. And we're like, yes, thank you so much. You feel so good. And so we are actually contributing to that toxic relationship. And nobody wants to talk about this. I get in so many dirty looks. Like, I get in trouble for saying that because, hey, I'm a victim of narcissism. Yeah, well, listen, baby, so was I. But I don't want to stay there. To be a survivor, you have to understand what you're holding. And I realized I wasn't holding anything anymore. How can I survive anything if I don't have my tools? I don't have my weapons. I gave them away.
Bingo. And that's just it. And Elisa's got that comment. We've highlighted it here, that's just it. You give up the story. We, us, all of us, right? And again, and not just women. It's not just, there's not just one gender that's more narcissistic than another. I mean, it's all genders that are narcissistic.
It used to be different though, Laura Lynn. It used to be that it was, because it's narcissism is actually identified as a male disease, a disorder.
Thank you for correcting me. Keep going, please.
Okay, so because it's identified as a male disorder, because it has to do with the ego, and the ego is more masculine, it used to be like 40 years ago. So Professor Sam Vaknin, so he talks about how about 40 years ago, the ratio was like 70% male and like 30% female. But now we're hovering at half and half.
Oh, interesting.
We have women that are coming in more masculine.
And is it because of some of the role parity and stuff that we have now? We've risen in the ranks in the workplace. Is it that because we're emulating men to be strong and that we're taking on some of these negative traits as well that were traditionally associated? Or is it just because, what other reason?
Exactly. Because we've taken on the masculine roles out of survival. Okay, so at exactly that, but women have taken on more male traits in society. Yes, we have. And as a result, those traits lead us to picking up those bad behaviors. And we are now seeing that we have to fight it. It all boils down to one thing for both parties: deficiency in self-love. Because a narcissist is deficient in that, as are the energy givers. It's like the exact problem. But it's just manifesting a different way. And that's exactly, so Craig, here he says, every myth talks about some entity coming along and mining you of gold. They're taking what is mine. They're just mining what they need, and we are letting them, and okay, again, let's be fair, we are taking from them what we need. That doesn't feel good to hear, I get that, but we are taking from them exactly what we need, which is validation, affirmation.
Well, and it's like I said, it's just so clear and illuminating how you're saying this. Like, yes, I can see why people get nudgy about it, because we've empowered the narcissist to take advantage of us. And then the only way to disarm the narcissist is, again, to try to take back power that we've already surrendered. And that's a really hard thing to do.
And
No
in a
wonder.
previous comment, Alicia says, I think it was like she realized she was giving all of her tools to them right away. They knew exactly where to come at her.
Yeah.
There it is. See, and so for her, it was abandonment. For some of us, it's security. So you'll have people that are in really toxic relationships and they can't leave, and they say, well, where would I go? I can't take care of myself. It's because the narcissist has figured out right away, oh, you just need security. So for me, mine is the dream. If you come at me and you can show me how to give me my dream, you could show me how creative you are, and you want to build and have the homestead, you want to have all the land, and you want to be self-sufficient. Oh, baby, I am on. Like let's go. And they know it.
Ooh. And so one of the things I'm really curious about is, as you went through, like I said, this journey and figuring out how to heal yourself and then sharing these tools and these steps on how to do it, what did you do? Talk to our audience about strength, where your strength came from, because it's not only just inner strength, right? There's other outlets and avenues that we all need to be able to get through. Nobody does this alone.
Well, I'd say for myself, the immediate strength, it depleted pretty quickly. Like you say, you can't really do this alone. I found myself after the discard and finding out there was some infidelity in all of this. And, my situation is very unique. And one of the problems, I'll just tell you before I go further, is that when you have a story and you want to share it with the world, you have to be really careful how that's done, because you're going to end up in potential legal, pragmatic, fun times, right? So I've had to be very careful how I express my story. And so at the beginning, when I wanted to, I needed help and support, I couldn't just express my story to the world. And so I found myself driving from British Columbia to Alberta, and I was on my parents' doorstep with my kids, and I stayed in my bedroom there for 2 days. I locked the door. I did not leave. I did not eat for 2 days. And I felt like I didn't have support. And as much as they were my parents and I love them, we're not very super, super close. And so in that room, what happened is what I hope that no one will have to go through, and is a huge fuel and a drive for my book. I found myself giving up and releasing my spirit. I'm done. I can't do this anymore. This man that I loved with all that I had, I gave him everything. He tossed me aside like I was a dirty old rag. And there's this part inside that you're a diamond. You do know that. But you don't know how to validate that for yourself. So that thing outside of you, the narcissist, they've been validating that this whole time. And when that goes away, you're totally lost. And so I found myself just giving up. And I had a man that I've never met him in person. I gave him a hand years ago out of his own suicidal ideations, and I just helped him get through his moment. And he called me, and it was such a shock that thing shocked me into, okay, I got to answer the phone. And so I picked up my phone and I said hello, and he was energetic CPR, and he brought me back, and I sat straight up out of the bed. I was like, oh, okay, I can do this. I'm okay. I sat on the bed. I opened the door. I went downstairs. I got a plate of food, and my family's just looking at me like,
hello, Stacie.
You're back? And that was it. And then from that moment forward, the support, I realized that's the support that has to change. And for me, that was a variety of people. And it actually, and this doesn't work for everybody, But there were some romantic relationships that I gave a shot to afterwards. And they were the sweetest people. And they were a support that showed me more and more how to love myself. And then from there, you get these, Craig, who you're having on the show next week, he's my best friend. And that man, he's held me from the throes of death so many times. And that's the people you need, even if you have just one. And so I want my book to be like the one. If you can't find anyone and you're locked in your bedroom, that at least you have this, because this will lead you here to me. And my heart is always there for you. Because I cannot imagine anyone feeling like I did. And I know that people do. So this was really the driving force for my book, is that there was a hole and I filled it.
You absolutely did, because I did the same. Like I read tons of books. Like my favorite one was, Too Good to Leave, Too Bad to Stay. I mean, it's like Flag Warren,
Yep.
But again, nothing from the perspective of what I was experiencing. And my family was like, oh, get over it. And I'm thinking, am I crazy? No, I'm intelligent. I don't think I'm crazy.
No, you're not.
Didn't know. And again, at that time, there weren't the level of chats and forums and supports and things that there are now. And I didn't know what to do. It's like, oh my God, I got to figure this out. And it felt like such an isolating experience.
I think that's purposeful. So a narcissist's relationship with you is meant to be isolating. And that is a topic that we talk about in the book. There's a reason for it, because they need you to be only theirs for so many reasons. One of them is the supply, the energetic supply, the financial supply, the emotional supply. It depends what it is that they need from you, because supply is going to be different for every relationship. Okay. And if they have to share that, there's a chance that they're going to lose out on supply, but there's also a chance that you're going to start to figure out what's going on. And so they like to keep you very isolated. And a lot of people that are in these relationships, and depending how the narcissistic relationship is kind of being expressed, if there's violence or not violence, depending on all of that will depend if the person that's in it will be highly secluded or just slightly secluded. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. We just had that weird glitch that we were talking about, like energy and things. It's like, oh, okay. And then I disappeared, but we're back. And that is just it, because it's, I guess, one of the tools in the playbook that the narcissist uses, where you deliberately force the person away and pull them away from that support system, the people that can provide rational thought and logic and counterbalance, and say, is this normal? Like he did this to me. They could say, no, this is not good, and walk away. And by being pulled away from those people, you're left to your own thoughts. And it's so easy to be, I don't know, to surrender to your own insecurities is, I think, where I wanted to go with that.
So think about how many times you particularly did it take you to even consider leaving, and how many people in our chat, maybe they've been in it, and how many times did it take them to leave? And so Shar Kelly, she says, I was involved what I think is more of an avoidant, which is very similar to a narc. But what thoughts do you have on this? Okay, so in the context of what we're saying, even, is that, again, depending on how the narcissistic behaviors or the disorder are manifesting in the relationship, that will depend on how it is seen and how secluded you will be and what kind of behaviors you're going to receive, what kind of treatment you're going to receive. So now an avoidant, so here's something that I'm so glad this came up, because I wasn't sure if it would I'm so much into the organic revelation of conversation.
It is so great. Thank you, Shar, for that, and everybody else who's commented.
Yes.
Some new guests here. Keep it coming.
So we sometimes will just like over label this concept of narcissism. Everybody's a narcissist. Okay. But sometimes we actually have wounded empathic people who have narcissistic behaviors and will throw out red flags, but they're not narcissists. They don't have the disorder, okay? But they do have behaviors. But again, they're not even really categorized as narcissists. They're wounded empaths who have now shut off all emotions because it hurts too bad. They become very passive aggressive. They become passive in their lives. They're like the mallard duck that just sticks their head underwater and sticks their behind up above, right? And so, there's lots of times that people, just like Char's saying, like an avoidance, you can have an avoidant attachment pattern, which is you're a runner. So let's break that down further. So you have the avoidance and you have the anxious, and then there's more in between. There's disorganized attachment patterns, and then there's combinations of these. And what these are when you experience from ages 0 to 7 as an average in your life, your subconscious is creating patterns of understanding based on experiences and based on what you are seeing and understanding from what the world has presented to you, so your environment. So these patterns, if you're an avoidant, it means that you are seeing the world in a way that says love is dangerous, love hurts, and I really, really want it, but I am going to have to avoid it as soon as you get too close. I'm a runner. An anxious attachment pattern is that you need the same love, and you're like, I really want this love. Please come a little closer, not close enough, closer, and you're so anxious if anybody gets away from you. And there is a really common thing here. Anxious and avoidance are like magnets, the same way that narcissists and empaths, or energy givers and energy takers, are. They're all magnetic. And so I postulate in the book this question: is it possible that the reason you're attracted to these opposites is because that's the very thing that you need to learn about? So as somebody who's always been attracted to narcissistic people, what is it that I need to see about myself in those relationships? Well, you see, they actually have the missing pieces. You know why they feel like home? Because they know how to say no. Yes. Because they know how to say, yeah, not my problem. I don't know how to do that very well. I'm learning. But see, narcissists, they cross over boundaries. But those of us that are attracted to the narcissist, we don't have any. We have to learn the very thing that they're mirroring to us. We have to learn. And so I think that the places we've been are not for loss. And that's what, again, I hope people walk away with, is they can go through the book and see that they can recover so much more than just, I'm healed from that relationship, where you realize, wait a minute, I found myself. I found me. So Char Kelly says, I am an anxious attachment. Okay, so now you understand why you would be so naturally gravitated towards someone who is avoidant, because you're looking for somebody to essentially mirror what you're missing. Now, it gets even more interesting here, Laurelyn. Not only are you interested in learning just very subconsciously these things, but you probably have a pattern and a belief system that says that you always have to fight for love, that you always have to give more than you have. Yes. So somewhere in that 0 to 7, that's what you learned. You learned that love is not accessible, or love is difficult, or I am difficult. That's when I've learned. And I have re-established those neural pathways, because I would always walk away saying, I'm the problem. And so I got to work harder. That's where a lot of performance issues come from. So I am less interested in understanding how the narcissist behaved to you as the victim, as the survivor. I am more interested in understanding, what do you believe, and why did you let them come so close to you?
And this is what I love you're digging into, because a lot of folks who have had conversations about narcissism and relationships they've been in, but what you're tapping into is not only with your 30-day plan and your stepwise and 5 steps and how to move there and make it accessible for people to move beyond the narcissistic relationship, but as you said, not to just recover from it, but to figure out what is that point of vulnerability, that switch, that trigger that they can zero in on. turn it on and decide when they want to turn it off, and leaves us shattered.
That's right.
What is that? So that we can be in control of that switch and
Yes.
ideally can kill the switch.
Yes.
Right? That's what you're digging into. And I love this, Stacie.
And so the easiest way that I figured out how to do that, and again, like I said, I did not have the tools. I couldn't find the answers in any of these books. And that's not to say they aren't there. I just couldn't find them. Is that I'm a huge educator on what I call the 4 bodies. And we talked about this in our introduction. Mm-hmm. So I wanted my readers, and this is how I educate through my Connect Me coaching or my private academy, is we work through the 4 bodies. So that origin point of your trauma is going to manifest through your physical body, your mental body, your emotional body, and your etheric body. And usually what happens is the trauma separates all 4 of those. And my role in this world, my job and my pleasure and privilege is to help you put them back together. And so in the book, every chapter is organized into 3 parts that is addressing those 4 bodies. So we have the letter to the narcissist, and that's engaging the emotional body. This is where a letter essentially scribes out all the things that you're feeling and thinking that maybe you haven't been able to express.
Right.
But then we're going to take that one step further. So we move into the narc notes. That's the second part of the chapter. The narc notes are the education that works with the mind. So now I'm going to challenge the cognitive dissonance that you have from all that manipulation. And I'm going to educate you from the letter. So let's say the topic of the letter was trauma bonding. I'm going to educate you now and say, okay, so our author of this letter talks about this and this. Well, that's called trauma bonding. And then when we move past the mind, we're going to now move into the heart. The heart space is moving into those places of the soul, the etheric body, moving into places that we don't always really go because it hurts too much. And we use that in each chapter. It's called the healing epilogue. And that's where not only am I giving you a place to access your heart, your etheric body, but then after the healing epilogue, because I challenge you in that to do the homework, I leave space after every chapter for you to document your thoughts and to actually create the change for yourself. So this is a workbook. It's a manual and a workbook. And I always say you don't buy your book to give away. That's yours because this is going to be your story. This is what you're going to work through.
This is, and the level of pain that people have gone through during the relationship and that torment and indecision, do I stay, do I go? How do you help people with your book navigate what is right for them with respect to that next move? And is it some of these different exercises in the book that you're helping people evaluate? What is that, like I said, that switch of vulnerability? What is it about the relationship that's pulling them down so they can make an informed decision about how much longer do I stay, or am I in denial, and wake things up? Talk to us about how the exercises help people with their thought process work through some of those really difficult decisions, right? Should I stay or should I go?
So naturally, this is something I've always done. But when I did my counseling certification, you learn that as people, we actually engage more with questions than we do statements. So in the book, I'm going to give you statements, but the healing epilogue is filled with questions. And that's where radical vulnerability comes in. Because I can tell you till you're blue in the face, you're in an abusive relationship. It's not normal to have somebody slash your tires or steal your money from the bank account or call you and tell you one moment that you're the most loving person and the next moment say that you're a whore. That's not normal. I could tell you that. But if you are not ready to see that about yourself, it doesn't mean anything. So the book focuses through, like I said, engaging the different parts of us. It then moves you to, you have to ask yourself those questions. And so the healing epilogue always has self-reflection, because the goal of the entire book and the goal of my life in this reality is to help us find our true self, to return to the original self that we are, that is unencumbered of trauma. And so that's the only way. So if my girlfriend that I see, there's someone in my life right now that has repeatedly gone back, 4 times. And as we've got a minimum of 7 times that a woman or man will go back to an abusive relationship. So, she's repeatedly going back, but, until she steps back and asks herself a question and it just clicks, nothing will change. And so that's where we just have to offer the support. We're here, we're holding your hand, and we're offering statements and questions. Like one of the best questions in the book, it's a technique that I use called "Not My Shoes." And we just step the client outside of themselves and say, if you saw this situation happening to your friend, what would you think? How would you respond? What would you counsel them? If you were stepping in their shoes, looking in on your life, what would you think? And that breaks just enough, that cognitive dissonance, for information to pass through.
That's what I love about all of the examples and the approach that you're taking, is saying you're making it so accessible. Very, very simple to visualize and to feel, right? I'm wearing my shoes now. No, take them off. Now put on Stacie's shoes or Char's shoes or Sandy Wandy's or Alicia's or any of the folks here and say, put their shoes on now. What are you experiencing? And we've got a good question here from the audience that I want to call out, that if one's going to do the exercises in your book, The Last Letter, how long until people start to see some of those, I guess, those light bulb moments where they start to recognize how much power they gave into the narcissistic relationship and what they're doing to not only heal, but start to pull back and rebuild back to whom they were intended to be from the beginning before they were traumatized? So talk to us about that. We've got this question here on the screen.
Well, if someone's going to pick up the book or make a call to me for help, it means that there is something in them that is already recognizing there's a problem. So that's a good start. Nobody's going to read this book if they're not in that state. Okay. It depends. I really believe it depends on how determined you are and how open you are to see yourself. So I recently just had a client that they were very enthusiastic about creating change in a particular relationship and regarding narcissism. Yet when we got to the core wound, they couldn't quite look. And so they retreated. And that's really normal, because those are things that you've lived with a very long time. It's a passenger that you have on your train, and you're really used to them, and you're used to that trauma. And I can tell you that from my own experience, I was pretty used to bad behavior, believing that I was the cause of it. And I'm just going to be real honest. I liked the conflict. I was so used to the conflict. I didn't know what to do with it. And when I came out of that and started to feel peace, just like Sandy Wandy has said, it's like being addicted. I was addicted to the conflict. And that's only because my subconscious didn't know anything different in its program. It's just a tape that's playing on repeat, right? And so the time frame it's going to take is really dependent on the person and where they are. So in the book, we have 27 chapters. You could do 1 chapter a week. In the book club that I created it's a very vulnerable, very small group book club. It's week by week. And there is times I suspect that we would get through a certain week and nobody's ready to budge, and we got to stay there for a little while.
A couple of weeks for that chapter, right? Yeah. Right? Yeah.
I don't know if you can answer that question succinctly, because this is going to be dependent on you as the individual.
And I get that and understand, because as I'm talking to you and I realize what I did, because I'm conflict avoidant, I traveled, I dug deeper into bigger jobs and more demanding jobs. And I was just gone 80% of the time. Oh, okay.
And that works until it doesn't work.
Right.
Yeah. So you really have to, that was my dog.
Hello, dog. We love dogs on this show.
Her name is Nika, and she is a Cane Corso Presso Canaria. So she's a big girl,
That's
80
a lot of
pounds.
syllables.
It's a
Yeah,
lot of syllables. Yeah.
that as many syllables go with the size of the dog. Yeah, yeah.
She's come in the office to check on me.
I see.
You know,
What?
this is like a topic when I think of like I'm reading through these comments and one of the comments, I think it was Alicia Gordon, and she says she's like, "Holy sheet!"
Yeah.
Those moments, I'm like, I live for those moments. If somebody has that light bulb moment, I'm like, let's do this. Like I'm geared up. I'm whatever you need, I am in, because those moments actually come, I think, a little too few and far between.
They do. And that was one of the things that I was really drawn into, like I said, your world, your orbit of what you're trying to do. You're not trying to connect with 10 billion people. You're trying to connect with the people who need you to help them move beyond where they are so they can start to realize who they are and what their potential is with respect to loving relationships. And it's a magical thing. It's a special thing, Stacie.
If we put that much energy into ourselves that we were putting into a narcissistic relationship,
All right.
how would your life change? And then how would, by extension, the lives around me change? So if I can focus more on not just healing myself, but teaching others, and in that, you then travel with this education and you heal yourself and teach someone else, to me, that is the ripple effect. That's just, I'm in the center and it's just expanding outwards. And I think that in our society, we are a little too used to grandiosity and the desire and the drive for that. And we think that everything has to be so large, but it doesn't. Because if I meet you and I help you find who you are, what are you going to do with the world? How are you going to express your true self to the world and be a change maker?
Absolutely. That is what it is. And on that change maker, I regard myself, my nonprofit, other things I do, again, we're not going to talk about that here, but as a heart-centered change maker. And I am working through Helpopedia and my nonprofit with other folks who share that same mindset and feel like we want to give back collectively. And I love how Alicia's put that in here, that those of us that have been through it, we find a way, if we can, and it's within us and our capacity, that we can pay it forward.
Yes.
So that somebody else does not have to go through the level of trauma and suffering that we did, or feel like they're alone going
That's
through
right.
your bedroom for 2 days, just holed up trying to figure out what had just happened to you.
And part of that is, consider that some people don't know what's going on to you because you've projected on the outside that everything is fine. You have this perfect life. And when everything just falls to the ground, now I'm a very transparent person. I live very vulnerably, and anyone who knows me and follows me, they know that I share the nitty gritty and the dirty too. But in that narcissistic relationship, I didn't know that anything was severely wrong until it was too late. So I've projected to the world how wonderful things are because I'm living in a narcissist fantasy now. Okay. I stepped outside of my reality.
That you helped create. Right.
Right. I helped create something that's an illusion. It's a delusion. Okay. So now I want support, but people don't understand. And that goes into a whole other level of what happens when we then reach out to support through counselors, or we reach out to support of like medical emergency workers, and they don't believe us because the outward appearance we've manufactured with a narcissist that everything is so beautiful and wonderful. Now it gets deeper and worse and heavier, is that we don't even say how bad it is because we're still protecting them, because we still don't know ourselves and we don't protect ourselves. And so we're still amplifying this giant story that everything is okay. And so we're not heard. So support it can be really hard to find because they just don't understand what we're talking about. My family didn't understand. They thought everything was fine.
and it's also where not only part of that fantasy and that delusion, right, that we are co-creators of, which in itself is crazy, but there we
Yep.
go, that we can't let other people know that we're failing, because then we have to admit to the world we failed in our relationship. We did the thing wrong. We did the this, we did the that. And it's just, it's unbelievable. And when they get to you and they needle and weasel their way in there, they get to the heart of all of the things that really bother you. And of course, you can't come forward. Well, it's really hard to do and say, not even publicly in a forum like this, but even privately on a small scale to friends or family and say, yeah, this is kind of what happened. I think, because we don't want to admit it. We don't want to admit how broken we are, because
Or that we did that we have allowed that behavior.
That's
right. Like I actually say, I think in the book, like, I am an educated woman and I felt so much shame. How did I not see that? How did that get past me? It just, I felt so stupid.
But that's just it. Like, I look at that and think, like, same thing. Like, I'm smart. Like, I don't give a about flattery. Like, I don't care. Keep your compliments to yourself. I really, right. I'm old. I don't care. I have no filter anymore. Right. I'm like, woohoo. But again, at the time, like, how did I get sucked down that rabbit hole? Like, are you kidding me?
It is. It's an illusion. It's that in the beginning, because you were self-love deficient, we were craving something, that we agreed to step outside of our own mental constructs of sanity and our own needs, and we stepped into an illusion with someone else. And they already had the platform. Okay, we just brought some flowers and fancy curtains to the thing.
We built it for them. Like, they knew what they wanted.
Oh yeah.
We enabled and empowered them to build it.
We did.
And as we're getting close to the end of the show, one of the things that I am going to ask, and Sandy's called it out here, if you are listening and enjoying Stacie, we want to amplify her message and ability to heal and help other people and make those connections. So please like this episode. And it's certainly, again, it's right, it's YouTube, it's the algorithm, feed the beast. That would be helpful. But okay, back to Stacie. So you've walked us through a number of different things. So one, with respect to some of the exercises that you put into this book, telling people what they need to do and how to just go very stepwise and gradually into thinking about things differently in their situation and what they want and what they have and what they don't, and how to go through these steps from, through the indignation and the anger and all of that to the other side, to recovery. We've talked a little bit about and heard from you how people, like, if your friends are in denial, and using the very simple and metaphorical example of stepping out of your own shoes and into their shoes, or vice versa. What other bits of wisdom can you share with us that comes through either in the last letter in your book, or just from your heart, or in your research? What do you want folks to really, really know?
I think I want people to know that you're worth it, and that you don't ever have to put yourself down or have anyone else put you down to be valuable, and that you are a diamond. And that's something I remember saying, like, I'm a diamond. Why are you throwing me away? But I threw myself away long before the narcissist ever did. And so I would really want people to walk away understanding that they have such an incredible value, and there's a reason that you were targeted by a narcissist, because not only did they understand your value, but they saw that you didn't understand it.
Yes. And that's a mind. I mean, really,
yes, it is.
Right? And we don't know ourselves that somebody else can get in there and figure it out before we can, even years before
years. So that is the pinnacle, the hope, the great job I hope I have done is to help people see their value, because energy givers, the empaths, we are deficient in self-love in a way that we can talk till the kingdom comes that we know this stuff, but the truth is that we are unhealed in understanding our value. And the evidence of you having value, that you know you have value, the evidence is boundaries.
Yes.
That's how you will know. So if you meet
Alicia,
someone,
I'm looking at you. Alicia, Alicia P, I know your story. Boundaries.
right? That's
Boundaries.
the evidence. And so boundaries are not just saying I want this. Boundaries are not saying I need this. Okay. Boundaries are that you establish a clear line that has a consequence. So think of an electric fence. Okay. So there's a fence, and you can say to a narcissist or anyone in your life, any toxic relationship, this is the fence, you shall not cross it. Okay, but until you tell them what's going to happen if they try to cross it,
Right.
it doesn't mean anything. That's why you electrify it, because that's the consequence. The consequence is you are going to get stung. So if you want to understand, if you are healing and understanding your value, all you got to do is look, do I have boundaries? And can I hold them?
Bingo.
Bingo.
And that's just it. And where do they get, or we get, that energy to electrify our fence? We get it, right? We get it from folks like yourself, right, who have this wisdom and this willingness to share what you've learned with other people. We can get it from our guest who's coming up next week, Craig Nolan, as an energy healer. Get it from the guests we've had in the past, like Alicia, people sharing their story and paying it forward. This is it, right? This is what we need. I love this visual that the boundary has to physically manifest itself as a fence, and a fence with consequences.
It must have consequences.
We
And
need
you can reach out to that support. That support gives you the fuel to get started. But what must occur is that you can go inside for all the fuel, and you are never dependent on anything exterior to you. This is understanding the interior power, and that I am the one that charges that fence, and I determine how high it is. I determine how close you get to me. That's the value. That's how you know you're a diamond, when you can do that.
Ooh, I love that, because that's the twist, right? Like where I was saying, okay, we want to electrify this fence, this boundary, that we're leaning on others and we're asking for help to put their energy into it,
Which
to
is important.
to
Yep.
protect us. Yes, I do think that it's a key part of it, but digging into deeper into what you said is that that's what we're doing. When we take our power back, we flip the switch and we're like, it's electrocuted. Don't cross it, as if you do. Right?
Exactly. Because I could say till I'm blue in the face, don't talk to me like that. Or that's not appropriate behavior. Like, you cannot just enter into my bank account and take all my money. Okay, but that's not going to do anything until you say, the next time that you do that, if you ever do that again, here is what I devise as the consequence. Otherwise, what have you told them? You've told them that you're not okay with it, but you have no plan to exit that at all.
But you can do it again, and then we'll have this conversation again.
Yeah.
Why not? Right? We don't like being redundant.
Boundaries, that's what we're here to learn. If you are self-love deficient as the energy giver in a relationship, I will guarantee you that you are here to understand boundaries and how to use those boundaries to establish your self-worth.
Oh, fantastic. So with this, we are wrapping up with the incredible Stacie Rae, author of The Last Letter, Surviving a Narcissistic Relationship. You can find her everywhere on social, right? The Resting Traveler, got information here. She's got her book. And of course, we have the link to her book and everything else in the show feed and description. And I encourage you to follow her and to get her book if you are having some issues or concerns about maybe you aren't in a narcissistic relationship, you're not sure what to do. lots of great content out there in the world, but it's highfalutin. Stacie really, really makes it accessible. And just this is what we need to do. All of this wonderful support we've had from everybody in the chat. I thank all of you for sharing your love, sharing your stories. I mean, that takes bravery too, to come here and talk about that. And we put it on the screen. And that's just it. We're creating this community of people who are helping each other understand how much value we each have.
Yeah. And I think we need to keep doing, to have these types of conversations that are just very casual and organic, and have people ask the questions. Like Shar Kelly is asking questions that perhaps she doesn't really know where to ask those questions anywhere else. And so you providing this type of platform, like, I am happy to engage in that way, because we are spreading a message that is desperate. The world is desperate to hear.
Right. Each of us matters. We are diamonds. Even if we are diamonds in the rough, we are still freaking diamonds. We just need a little polish and a little shine and sparkle, right? That is what we need. And folks, so we can find it. Thank you for sending the link. There it is. Everybody see it. www.thelastletter.ca, as in Canada. Right? We love our Canadian peeps. We love all peeps, right? Except the not nice peeps, except for those.
Or those weird Easter candy peeps. Those are horrible. Those marshmallow things.
I actually only figured out that I really love them once I put them in the microwave, because it's magic to see them expand and explode. That's interesting. Still don't eat them, but it's just really cool. So I just had new respect for peeps after I started playing with that and watching that happen. Mm-hmm. And my sister eats them stale. She loves them stale. Total nut job. But
well, we are going to bring people out of their stale peeps. And Shar, you are so welcome. I am so glad we've touched you today and brought you some rest. But we're going to bring you out of the stale peeps.
No more stale peeps.
No.
And we've got some lovely comments here. Shar, she's clearly grateful to Stacie, really helping, as am I. Just some of the, we just scratched the surface here, but just still
let's do it again.
Depth with those scratches on being able to help. And so it's been wonderful. People be able to find Stacie again. We'll put it all in the descriptions. And yes, we've got Craig here next week. Energy Healers, same time, same place, 7 p.m. And yeah, absolutely. So thank you, Stacie. Really appreciate that you've taken the time to dig into what you've experienced and have the courage to not only put it to paper, but to really map it out and dig in and figure out what are those connections between situations and people and behaviors, and how to make it so that everybody can access what you've learned very, very quickly and then apply it. So start applying it chapter by chapter.
That means a lot. Thank you.
All right, everyone. Until next week, have a great week until it's Toxic Tuesday again. That's toxic. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.